Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. And once again, our goal is to share with you some knowledge from folks that really are impacting lives. And today, wow, talking about impacting lives, we have the one and only Steve Rizzo joining us today. I'm sure you've heard about Steve. He is absolutely one of the top comedians in the country. In fact, at one time, he was sharing the marquee with folks like Ellen DeGeneres, Rodney Dangerfield, Eddie Murphy, and yes, even Jerry Seinfeld. He was also honored as a Showtime comedy all-star. But when he was at the pinnacle of his career, he made a decision to go in a different direction. And we're going to talk about that today. Also, we'll talk about where he was in his youth, some challenges he had, how he overcame those challenges, and what all came to be what Steve Rizzo is sharing with his audiences now. Let's get started with the Massimo Show. Hi, this is Rod Santomassimo, and welcome to the Massimo Show. The objective of the Massimo Show is to share how you can maximize your personal, professional margin. That's right. Let's make more money in less time. Let's turn chaos into clarity, confusion into confidence, and income into real wealth. Along with sharing my insight on how I grew a multi-million-dollar professional business, we're going to bring you the expert advice from a variety of authors, consultants, and thought leaders who will provide the tools you need to maximize your own personal and professional margin. Welcome to the Massimo Show. Steve, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Rod. I appreciate it. As you said, the one and only Steve Rizzo, that's a good thing that there's only one of me.
It's amazing. Now, I knew of you. I'm a fellow New Yorker in my youth, and I was involved a little bit just following comedians. I enjoyed them. So I've actually heard of you, which was a great thing when I heard that I had the chance to talk to you. Like, wow, that one? Great. But let's just get right to it, because what you're doing today is absolutely amazing, how you're changing lives and how you're helping people get in a position to really understand and appreciate what they have. So let's talk about you in your preteen, teenage years. Where were you born? Where were you raised? What was it like? And what were your passions back then?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, so I acquired that attitude, and that has stayed with me till this day, actually. I was raised with a good mom and dad, great people, but they instilled a lot of fear with something was always going to go wrong in the household. And I never realized that. I thought that was just a normal household. Going into my later on in years in high school, junior high, I started having some challenges in learning disabilities, and in 8th grade, I was told by a guidance counselor that I wasn't smart enough to go to college. He didn't use those exact words, but what he said to my mom and dad, who was sitting right next to me, I was only 14 years old. He asked me what my aspirations were, and I said, you know what, I want to be a teacher. And he just paused and he hesitated and he said, I don't really see that in your future. He goes and looks at my mom and dad. He just doesn't have what it takes to go to college. And the scary thing, Rod, is that I believed him. And so did my mom and dad. They were from the old school. They figured this guy's got to know what he's talking about. Look at his title, guidance counselor. If he doesn't know, who does? So not only did I let this guy tell me I couldn't go to college, I sat there while he told me what I was going to do with my life. And the options were not conducive to being happy at all.
So I know what happens in your high school years where you were actually named least likely to succeed. Do you think the fact that this happened to you at 14 years old and people created a mindset for you, that leads to the path of others, or how you projected yourself to be labeled as least likely to succeed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Voted least likely to succeed. And as I said, you don't realize that stuff is doing damage. But what happened was that I took those beliefs that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough into my adult life. And they were the determining factors for many of the choices that I made. My philosophy in life was don't try and you can't fail, and you don't have to deal with rejection and not being good enough. As a result, I hung out with a very tough crowd, really tough crowd of people. Most of them are dead or they're in prison, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And it wasn't until 5 years after high school where I had a brother, still have a brother, who's 100% disabled from the Vietnam War, who totally turned his life around. And he went to college and he became something, and he literally took me by the hand and he took me to college with him to sit in every class for 2 weeks. And after I got used to sitting there in the classes with him, he said, I'm glad you did this. Now I'm signing you up. And I was petrified. He signed me up. I was at a community college. And he said, if you need help along the way, let me know. He only signed me up for 4 classes. Got straight A's. And to make a long story short, I went on to a university. I graduated with degrees in a minor in psychology, a major in education, English. And I went back to the same school that I graduated from, where I was voted least likely to succeed. I was a counselor for kids with behavioral problems and an English teacher for 2 years.
So the desire you had back when you were 14 to teach, and we're told, no, you just don't have it. It's not in the cards. Mm-hmm. You actually made it happen. You made it happen.
Yeah, I realized that, you know what, you are doing it. But for everyone listening, you have to realize you're really not by yourself, because the universe has a way of opening up when you start following your heart, that people start coming into play that help you and to make you realize that you can do it. And then all of a sudden, when they realize that you can do it, all of a sudden you know that you can do it. And miraculous things start taking place in your life. And that's what happened. And that's how I started getting involved in stand-up thing, because I started doing stand-up part-time at the local clubs on Long Island in New York right after school, and I was really good at it. It was amazing how quick I caught on, and a lot of the stuff was my past. And my second year teaching, I decided to leave. I didn't even take a leave of absence. I quit and said, I'm going into the world of stand-up comedy. I did. And at that time, in the late 70s and early 80s, comedy started booming throughout the country. That's when every city, Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, had at least 2 comedy clubs. And there weren't that many comedians at the time. And I just started headlining clubs immediately, and things skyrocketed after that.
Let me pause it for a minute, because you're making it out, from what I understand of the comedian circuit and the ability to be a headliner, you're making it seem like it was pretty linear and easy for you, where in fact, it generally is not. And was your experience one that you sit now and go, wow, that was easier than most? Or was it one that really had the challenges and the struggles that you see in movies and TV shows of a comedian's life? Tell us about that.
That's a great question. See, while I was going to college, I was playing my music. I played the guitar, and I was playing with a friend of mine. And we got very well known in the Long Island, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area. And I was making a ton of money while I was going to college. It was exhausting, but at the time I was incredibly young. I had this energy, this vigor, and I started making money. And in between sets, I started doing funny things. And I started doing impressions, Bob Dylan singing Elvis Presley songs and Elvis Presley singing Bob Dylan songs. And I'm really good at impressions, and people would yell out, do Sylvester Stallone singing this song. And without me realizing it, comedy club owners were coming to listen to me. And they kept approaching me, and they kept saying, hey, why don't you try stand-up? And I was going, no way. There's no way I'm doing that. I'm not going up to an audience just to be funny. It was the music that saved me. I used it as a crutch. So to make a very long story short, the guy that I was performing with died from an overdose of drugs and alcohol. And I walked by Catch a Rising Star in the city when that used to be open. It was the premier club one day, and I walked past it, and then I walked in at night, and I said, I'd like to audition. I did 5 minutes, got a standing ovation. The rest was history. And yeah, there was challenges along the way. When I started doing stand-up, I had a guitar, and I did the impressions, and I did stuff like that. And sometimes I'd put the guitar down, and sometimes I would pick it up. But for a while, the guitar was my crutch. And then finally, I just put the guitar down and just started doing stand-up. So
you were doing the Adam Sandler gig way before Adam Sandler was really even known.
When I saw him doing Opera Man, I'll be honest with you, I was pissed off because I did that. I did that. I said, could you imagine if life was an opera? And because I said I went to an opera once at the Met. And I said, could you imagine if people were like that when I started doing this opera thing and a couple having an argument singing opera? And it was hysterical. And a guy walking in for a job interview and trying to tell the CEO of the company why they should hire him. And people were yelling out scenarios. And that's what I was really good at. People would just yell stuff out, and I would do it. Okay, so for a lot of business owners, a lot of presenters, let's face it, they say it's the scariest thing in the world. You and I don't feel that way, obviously.
but public speaking is hard. So for you, is it something you acquired? You were natural at? Where was it?
I felt at home on stage. I was natural at it. And I think the thing that I just put myself out there. And you're right. If you ask any actor, and I've spoken to a lot of famous people, and I know quite a few famous people, and they all say people think acting is tough, but one of the toughest things for them to do is to do a comedy, a movie comedy. But then they said the hardest thing of all is how can you get your butt up there to do stand-up? Because you're just vulnerable. It's your feedback. The only feedback you can get is the laughter. And if you don't get, that means you're not good. To me, to most comedians, there's nothing funnier than when another comedian is bombing on stage. Yeah, everyone says the number one fear is speaking, and it's really not. It's doing stand-up. And I just happen to do both.
We're going to get into the business side in the back half of this discussion, but I'm going to ask you about business right now, because have you ever bombed? And if so, how do you adjust? How do you react? Because people present and pitch and they recognize, or even a prospect call, I'm bombing. It's not working. So what were lessons you learned from the failure, the bombing?
I have bombed a few times. And one thing that always irked me is that people say it's never the audience if you bomb. And I said, no, that's not true. Sometimes it is the audience. And you've got to give yourself that slack. Sometimes the audience is just terrible, especially if you're doing a club and it's the third show on a Saturday night and everyone's drunk. That could work in your favor or it can work against you. I must say, Rod, the thing that really frustrated me is when I had to perform in front of the industry people. And the whole, I'm in Los Angeles at the Improvisation, and in the audience are producers and directors and casting people. And that's all that's in the audience because they hold certain nights up for them. And you got to do your stuff in front of them. And that made me really nervous. And I realized years after the reason why it did is because my old fears and inadequacy that I thought I had under control started coming back to haunt me.
I love your perception that sometimes it's not you, sometimes it is your audience. And we share with our members when they're making prospect calls, for example, there's a balance between what you say, in your case, what your gig, your pitch is, and who you say it to. Because many times you get a perfect pitch and the audience isn't receptive. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But we're going to ask one last question before our break. And then when we come back, by the way, Steve's going to jump into really what this is all about. And that's the mindset and the creation and the ability to forge a positive approach every single day. Let's segue to that next step. What happened? You're a very popular, very well recognized, very well paid comedian. And you said, no, I want to do something else. So what happened?
It wasn't so much that I wanted to do something else. Something happened. If you remember what I just said to you, I said when the industry people in the audience, I felt this inadequacy about me. And like I was nervous. So if you can't be you on the stage, it's self-sabotage. So what I started realizing in my career, because I was headlining clubs and theaters throughout the country, my opening acts were Drew Carey and Rosie O'Donnell, Chris Rock. These people opened for me. And they started getting the big breaks, and I couldn't understand why was opportunity knocking on their door but not mine. And I was faced one night, I woke up in a cold sweat. It was a harsh reality. Opportunity was knocking. I was just afraid to open up the door. And I realized I had an intense fear of success and failure. And I used my status as a headline comedian as an excuse not to audition in front of the industry people. That's where the breaks are. That's how they find out where you are. And every time my management team or agency would say, I have an audition for you, I would say, I really can't do it. I'm going to be booked that week in Dayton, Ohio. And to me, that was more important. I led myself to believe that was the most important thing, but it wasn't. It was a cop-out not to get in front of the industry people. Any other comedian with an opportunity to perform in any club or any theater, you get your management team and they'll urge you to do it. You drop out of that engagement and you do that audition. I didn't do it. And I realized I have to turn my life around. And I went on a quest to better myself. And for years, I read dozens of self-help books. I went to Tony Robbins seminars. I went to spiritual seminars. I fell asleep back in the day with cassette tapes, and then DVDs came out with headphones on my head, and I fell asleep with these affirmations. And through the years, I would say maybe about 2 years, a transformation started taking place, and the belief I had in myself was incredible. And everyone in your industry, in your whatever it is that you do out there, can believe in you. But if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going anywhere. But the belief I started acquiring that I had in myself was like on a rock solid foundation. Then I realized as soon as that started happening, the industry was coming at me full force, sent that energy out into the universe. And the weirdest thing is that I was no longer interested in them, and I was no longer interested in getting my sitcom or even doing stand-up, and I tried to fight that. I spent 20 years of my life trying to get to that point. But this inner calling started saying you should be doing something else. You have the ability to do something else. And this big mouth inside my head started saying, how could you do that? That's ridiculous. You dedicated your whole life to do this. Now you want to do something else. But that quest that I went on, I figured out what the strategies were that helped me to turn my life around, and was at a Tony Robbins seminar where I was taking notes, and I looked at him, and I don't even remember doing this. I wrote, I should be doing this, and then I put the pen down. I picked it up again a couple of minutes later. I said, I could be doing this. And then I put the pen down. 10 minutes later, I picked it up and I wrote, you're going to do this.
Wow, that was so strong. I want to do this. I want to come back. I want to revisit those 3 steps when we come back, then talk about the transformation, and then help our audience understand how to get those affirmations, and more importantly, leverage those affirmations for greater success, greater happiness, whatever the vision may be. So, Steve, hold on. Everyone else will come right back to the second session, our second point with the one and only Steve Rizzo. For now, hold on. We'll be back in a few minutes. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show. And oh boy, am I pumped. My new book, Knowing Isn't Doing, well, when it launched, it hit #1. That's right. Top-selling sales book in the entire country on Amazon.com. We're so excited to share many of our proprietary Massimo methods to allow our readers to start finally building that business and the life they've always desired. To get your own copy or learn more, visit www.knowingisn'tdoing.com. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with The Massimo Show, and welcome back with our special guest, the one and only Steve Rizzo, comedian extraordinaire, but then something happened, a transformation, which he shared with us during a Tony Robbins seminar. Before we jump back with Steve, and Steve, let me share with you, when I started the Massimo Group, I was just laid off from a national firm. The Great Recession hit. It was 2008, went to bed, no jobs at all to be found. I went to bed and I had a dream. And it's not corny, I know, but I woke up and my wife said, what's going on? I said, honey, I think I'm going to start a coaching company and help folks position themselves for this really tough time. We didn't know how tough it would get. We didn't recognize that no one had money to spend on coaching at the time, obviously, Stephen. But you know what? I think we're going to start this coaching company. And then like you said, I wrote some ideas down. I can do this. I should do this. Or I should do this. And so I finally said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So that's what I love about your story. So let's get back to that event. Take me through those 3 steps of Tony Robbins, and then let's see where that takes you. So take us back and remind us of those 3 critical steps.
Yeah, I was at his seminar and I was admiring what he does. It's just amazing. I still have that piece of paper that I wrote down. I have it in a frame in my office. And I wrote, I should do this, I could do this, and then I wrote, I will do this. And I don't even remember picking up the pen. It's only when I wrote the last one, I will do this, that I realized, whoa, and something clicked. And I just went and made that shift. I told my management team that I no longer needed their services. My manager wanted to sue me, and my agent told me to see a psychologist. Said, I already am. How do you think he's doing? And I know, really. And my PR person, they just thought I was absolutely crazy. As a matter of fact, at the time, my roommate was Drew Carey. And he told me, what are you doing? You're so close to making it. And I said, how could I be making it if I don't want to do this anymore? And he said, you're not going to do that speaking crap, are you? And I said, yeah, whatever it takes. And I gradually, I flew back home to New York because I was living in LA at the time. I told my wife, this is what I'm doing. She supported me 100%. And to make sure that I was still making money, I started doing stand-up in the tri-state area and gigs around there. But in between, I started investing my time and energy on how I can get into the speaking business. Everything started falling into place at a very fast pace. And I totally believe anyone out there, when you follow your heart, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life, serendipitous events and things take place that will just blow your mind. You just got to know you're doing the right thing.
You used a magic word there, Steve. You said blow your mind. So just like with the comedian career you had and the fast launch that you experienced, which is very uncommon, you were having the same experience with your speaking, which was extremely uncommon beyond the competition in comedy. The competition today in speaking, it's exhausting. What traits or what approaches or what mindsets can you attribute to the quick ramp up and relatively the quick experience of success in both these career paths?
What I offer people, my clients, are the common sense success strategies that I tell them will not only take them to a better place in life, but in their business. And the strategies are based on these three principles. And this is what I learned from life, and I learned the hard way. The first principle is you need to know without a doubt that you alone are the creator of your success and happiness, which means it's not what happens to you that determines how successful or how happy you're going to be. It's what you do about what happens. The second principle is you need to understand that you are the only problem that you will ever have, and somewhere within you is a solution waiting to be discovered. And the third principle is whenever you're confronted with a challenge or a problem of any kind, it's never a matter of managing the situation. It's always a matter of how you manage your mind. Can you manage your mind and the toxic thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that are trying to keep you from finding the solution that's waiting to be discovered? All those strategies are based on those three principles.
That's incredible. Let's put those principles into practice. Are there practices or habits? I know we want to talk about your books in a little bit, but are there practices or habits that can assist in this ability to be motivated and positive on a daily basis?
Yeah, throughout your working hours, you have to understand that you become what you think about day in and day out. You are the creator of your thoughts. As a matter of fact, the most profound thing that I've learned from living on this planet is what truly successful, happy, optimistic people know about life. They know without a doubt that they become what they think about. They understand in a very profound way that the thoughts that they have about any challenge in their life will ultimately determine the quality of success and happiness they're going to have in regards to those challenges. Now, contrary to what a lot of people may be thinking right now that are listening to this, it really isn't the situation, the event, or the circumstance that takes place in your life that determines your quality of life. It's how you think about these things, because your thoughts have the incredible power to either minimize or maximize the effect that challenge has on you. And it's not your thoughts within themselves that gives them great power. It's what your thoughts create. See, Rod, your thoughts create the beliefs you have about that challenge. As a matter of fact, the beliefs you have about anything in your life, be it race, religion, sex, the economy, education, the beliefs you have about your neighborhood, what you do for a living, the beliefs you have about your family, the beliefs that your listeners formulated about me in a short period of time that they're listening to me are created over a period of time through a consistent way of thinking. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your thoughts create your beliefs, write the story of your life. So if you go through the course of your life and you're constantly saying things like this to yourself on your road to success and it doesn't work out the first or second try, I can't believe this is happening to me. Every time I try to do something, it never works out. Why does everybody else have what I want? I go 2 steps up, then I have to go 5 steps back. People call that negative self-talk. I call it self-curse talk, because you're literally casting a spell on your life, because those thoughts are solidifying an already negative belief system. And those beliefs and those thoughts on a very vicious cycle start creating the way that you feel. And feeling good is crucial whenever you're starting out to achieve anything. And the reason why your feelings are crucial, because your feelings will determine the attitude you have on any given day. And it's a cycle that keeps happening over and over again. And your thoughts, along with your beliefs and your feelings and that attitude, it's like a cycle. They feed off of each other, will eventually create the actions that you take. The actions that you take lead you to the outcome. And that's why some people are successful and some people consistently fail. They don't know that they are the creators of their success and happiness.
I could not agree with you more. And I'm just thinking, my listeners are saying, yeah, I hear you. I just struggle with making that happen. So there are a lot of folks out there that share methodologies for getting in that right mindset. No doubt a lot of folks have heard of Elrod and the Miracle Morning and other ideas and concepts for affirmation. So, Steve, do you have a cadence or an approach or a structure that you share with your audiences that would say, this is how you do it? I mean, I understand what you need to get done, but is there a doing suggestion for folks listening today?
I think the key to making sure that you're in control of your thoughts, number one, is making sure that you are the director of your thoughts. It is incredibly difficult. Every time I give my workshops, people go, that's easier said than done. And of course, my answer is anything in life is easier said than done, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. When you find yourself, and I really want your listeners to get this, if you find yourself in a negative rampage, and you notice all of a sudden now I am not feeling right, and it's because of those thoughts, that means you believe your life isn't going the way that you want. At that moment, you have to become aware of what you're doing to yourself. You have to stop right in the middle of it and go, whoa, I'm not feeling right here, and of course I'm not listening to what I'm saying to myself. And in that moment of awareness, you have to allow yourself to hear what life is always asking you. Who do you think you are? And if you could allow yourself to hear that voice in the middle of that negative rampage that you're spewing out, who do you think you are? You enter into that state of awareness. And it's in that state that all the negativity stops. It ceases because your brain cannot focus on two things at once. It can only focus on one thing at a time. And then that moment of awareness is a space of opportunity for you. Now you could start asking yourself questions like, what'll happen if I continue on this rampage? Is this conducive for me enjoying the day? Wow, I have a client to meet in a half hour. What's my attitude going to be like if I continue on this path? This situation maybe isn't as tough as I thought it was going to be. And even if it is, what can I do to turn it around? Who can I go to that can help me to do this? Maybe I better put this on the back burner for now and get to it later. I can handle this. I know I can. There's something within me that can meet this challenge head on. And people don't realize that when you say to yourself, who do you think you are? It not only describes who you think you are, other people will look at you from the same perspective. And it's just a matter of knowing that you're in that state of awareness and that you know you can turn it around. This can happen many times throughout the day, but the key is the more you do this, the more you become aware when you're going on that negative rampage or if things aren't going right, the more it becomes a part of who you are. And it's not to say that you're not going to be confronted with challenges or problems. Of course you will. That's why we're here on this planet. We're here to experience, to learn, to grow, and to become the person we're supposed to be. But people don't realize that how you experience all the things that happen to you in your life, the things that you label good or bad will determine what you learn. That continued learning leads to your growth, and that growth paves the way to who and what you become. Your responsibility and your job, your entire life, is to become the best person that you can possibly be. Those are the things that can turn your life around. Again, it's not easy. For some people, it's easier than others. I don't think there's anyone listening that was consumed with as much negativity as me and fear about life than I was. And it took me quite some time. I still fall back into it every now and then. But it's incredibly reassuring to know that I'm going to come out of it.
Steve, this has been awesome. And I look at, every day people have, and you just use the word fear. For some people, it's hard to make presentations. It's hard to make phone calls. It's hard to ask for the business. It's hard to get up in the morning for some people. It just is. So this whole idea of shifting your mindset. Now we're going to first to the audience some of the books which you've written that really help encapsulate a plan to make this happen. But it's all paramount. So let me segue then to other questions for you before we let you go. It's a true story. It just happened to me last night. I just finished dinner. I'm on the East Coast. The phone rings at 8:00 and it's a West Coast client, one of our 30 plus coaches. And he says, hey, I just want to call you direct, Rod, and let you know that this was the first time ever in my life I've earned more than $1 million. And he was ecstatic, and he gave us credit for it, which was great, Steve. For me personally, that's what makes me tick. That is my high. That is absolutely my high. Besides exercise, when we find out we transform lives of a client in a positive way, more time with their family, more money is nice, but more time, to me, that's my high. You're on stage now talking motivation to crowds of thousands across the globe. What is your high today? Where do you get your high?
I'm on a mission to be a spark that can ignite change in people's lives. And as I tell everybody at the end of my program, whatever it is that I'm giving, I have quite a few programs, I always say them, I could only give you the strategies. It's up to you as to whether you use them or not. And they really are common sense to the point that they are so innate. We're born with these strategies. We're born with strategies on how to turn our lives around. It's just that we all get so caught up in the crap of life and get so overwhelmed by what we don't have, we can't appreciate what it is that we do have. We curse the things that life has given us rather than blessing what life hasn't given us. And most people don't realize the more you focus on your lack and the more you focus that your life isn't working, the more your life won't work and the more of that same stuff you're going to get back. And it's all based on choices. Every choice that you make, there is always a consequence, whether it's made consciously or unconsciously. And people don't realize that they have the power to choose more empowering ways if they just stop every now and then and realize what they're doing to themselves.
God bless you. You're absolutely correct. So I'm going to ask two more questions. The last one's going to be, of course, how people access you, your material, and all that. But before we get there, I want to just grab on back. You're a recovering comedian. You've gone through that phase of ultimate success. Do you still listen today to the new comedians? Do you get involved in that in any way, shape, or form? Or is that just that's your past life and you're moving forward? What's your perception there?
I haven't done stand-up, regular stand-up since the millennium. That was my last show. I was speaking for 5 years before that and doing stand-up at the same time, but I stopped in 2000. I do listen to Sirius Radio. As a matter of fact, some of my comedy clips are played on Sirius Radio. Every now and then you might hear my name pop up if you get the comedy channels on Sirius. I love the new comedians today. There's a lot of things that I just don't think are funny anymore. Comedy is subjective, of course. Everyone knows that. But there are those that will stand against the laws of time when it comes to comedy, and they're funny no matter when you listen to them. And I think one of those people is Brian Regan. I think he's brilliant. There are a lot of them out there, but as I said, I don't want to name the ones that I just don't think are funny at all. But I do have my opinions. I don't get some of it. I think a lot of that has to do with people not being in tune with one another as much as they needed to be and still need to be. But I think technology has separated us at a tremendous rate, to sometimes I believe a scary rate. I know to a lot of people that might sound old-fashioned, but the fact that you're going to text somebody and not tell them in person that you love them, and by texting them is just good enough, is, to me, that's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah, and I would agree.
Yeah, getting back to the comedy, I think that's a part of what it is that I'm saying. You know what I mean? Of course, comedy has shifted to what's happening today and the way people live. But I think the world could use a dose of getting real personal and being vulnerable to one another and try to connect.
Certainly, with your new career as a motivational, educational speaker, you have more of an opportunity to do that where you might have otherwise on the comedian front. So you made the choice that was best for you and has proven out with your mindset has led to all your success.
I appreciate that. And right now there are things happening, which I'm not at liberty to say, where my career is going to take another shift. It's pretty incredible with what is transpiring now. And I just want the listeners to know it's because I'm just letting it happen. And I'm not putting a time limit on it. And I'm not saying to myself, when is this going to happen? Gee, I did this and this. I should have this by now. I'm just going along every day knowing that what I have been trying to create is now creating itself. I couldn't be in a better place right now.
We can't wait to hear about the next phase of Steve Rizzo. But for now, our audience needs to know how to get more of Steve. You've written 2 incredible books. You certainly could share those. That one was called Motivate This, and then was called Get Your Shift. So you have 2 books. I believe you have some other materials. Steve, how do folks access you?
You can motivate this and get your shift together by going to steverizzo.com. It's on the home page. It's right there. It's very easy. Order it, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. My office can send it to you. Also, I would love everyone to get to know me better, and this is free of charge. It's not a sales pitch. On my homepage on my website, sign up for my Rizzogram. Every other week, you will get an article on or a video on primarily what we talked about today on your show, and it's how to be the best you, how to deal with adversity, and how to look at adversity as a blessing. And by the way, I want everyone to know the biggest challenges in my life, I realize now, have become my greatest blessing, because if I didn't have those challenges, I wouldn't be able to do what I do today, and I wouldn't be the person that I believe I'm transforming into. And we all have the opportunity to do that regardless of where you are in your life.
Steve, we can't thank you enough. I'm going to sign up for that Rizzogram immediately. And so thank you for your time today on the Massimo Show. And to our listeners, wow, think about all the lessons that Steve shared with you today. Think about the impact it can have on your life when, not if, but when you start applying what he shared with you. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. Don't forget, if you like what you heard, share it, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your colleagues. And most of all, remember, knowing isn't doing. So let's continue to move forward. Talk to you soon. I want to thank you for listening to this version of the Massimo Show. And please go out and share this with your friends, your colleagues. Heck, share it with your dog. Just share it. And more importantly, just give me some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. We all grow from understanding what our audience wants to hear. So until next time, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Show. Hey, this is Rod Santomassimo with the Massimo Group. And did you know over the last 12 plus years, we've worked with thousands of independent contractors, solopreneurs, and small business owners in helping them achieve the business and the life that they've always desired. To learn more how we could possibly help you achieve your goals, please visit www.massimo.coach. That's www.massimo.coach.